Yeah, my name's Will Hornaday from Albemarle Park. Um, that's it.
Hi, I'm Sue Oliva and I live in Fletcher.
I'm Celeste Gorman, interior design.
Uh, yes.
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 I don't actually don't need to be full, need the full hours a day. I just want to know that because this is kind of the last minute of it, I'm really being graduating here, kind of having to this stage where we get lockers here, things move along, sometimes here, that is what is, that are not, all years ago. And so that is because it's kind of the last minute of it, the first time is on special meetings. And so for their guidance for special meetings, we have to have it so very and that's what I think is wrong. That whole stuff. But I do want to now be February, kind of back to the what we're talking about, what we talked about, and kind of a little bit of
We have the Google Meet set up, and then this pin should be, I wonder if, oh, you know what? I bet you this pin didn't get added to the meeting when we were doing the duplicating thing.
You know what?
Dial-in number disappeared. It like just disappeared. Remember, we got it to save.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so weird.
Weird. I'll go to do that.
And I want this one, the one that we're actually in. I don't know why it would delete it on me. That's just weird. Is it usual for it to add a question mark at the end of it?
Not really. I'll do that in the basement.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. We're having, our audio is not connecting into the live stream, so got IT trying to help us out, but we can go ahead with our discussion while they're working on that in the background. So to go back to the educational event planning, we were looking at potentially contracting with Jonathan Richma for a speaking event. And then the other idea that Will had pitched some time ago when we were meeting with our steering committee was, I'm going to get it wrong. Every time I say it, I get it wrong. Pacha event, style event, which is kind of rapid fire presentation on a variety of topics, which sounds kind of cool. And there is a local Pacha organization that we had reached out to, and they were interested in partnering with us on facilitating a preservation specific style of event, or an event, a speaking engagement kind of session where they would feature different preservation related topics and speakers. It just logistically was certainly going to be hard for us to manage that in some ways because from a contracting standpoint, it was a little bit wonky. We weren't sure how the speakers were going to be organized and how much that was going to be our kind of thing to do. Anyways, we were also trying to focus on so many different recovery-related projects, which we still are, but we just kind of had to press pause for a little while on planning for our event. But we only have until May to spend that money, so we really need to get ducks in a row to start planning that event again, or events, whatever.
No, this is historic resources. I do not. Is it for the county or the city?
They meet on Mondays. I don't know, they could be having a special meeting.
I'll pull up the engagement.
Sorry. Sorry. It might be today, but it would be in this afternoon, I think. Sorry. Fun times navigating virtual meetings. So anyways, I wanted to touch base with you guys on that topic today to see if you had thoughts on reset button, topics we might want to cover now. Obviously, it's been quite some time, like almost 2 years since we applied for that grant funding. And so our worlds are quite different. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts before we start trying to refocus our energy around that, like what topics, if any, you think would be valuable for us to consider as we pivot back to focusing on that. Yes, Chair Horniday.
Can you remind everybody what the parameters are for that grant?
Yeah, so it's just to facilitate an educational event, and the educational event or events have to be focused around preservation specific topics. So we can have like an event where it's just kind of some miscellaneous topic that might be tangentially related. I did meet with our Michelle, our CLG coordinator, or sorry, not our CLG coordinator, our grants coordinator, and Christy, our CLG coordinator. I met with them back in maybe August or September to kind of talk them through our Kacha idea, because I was a little bit like unsure of whether that would be suitable for the parameters of the grant guidelines. And she had a little bit of concern, Michelle had a little bit of concern about that, just in terms of some of the topics that we threw out there, like one being, I was hoping to like, I'm sure I have my list in here somewhere, but we talked about featuring, these are topics that we talked about with the steering committee, where the Hell or High Water project that the library undertook, the Preservation Society's Grail Street House and Cappadocia redevelopment. We had talked about the YMI rehab project. We had talked about having Priscilla Robinson present on urban renewal, and a handful of other things. And then there were a couple, like Art in the Heart. I don't know if you all remember that project, but that was part of the revisioning for Pack Square that I thought was a particularly interesting project in terms of like weaving together kind of cultural interpretation and historic interpretation and public art and kind of storytelling. The Chabot staff didn't really seem to think that was a fit. And so my point is that whatever we even if I think if we refine that list to be mostly straightforward, I think we'd still want to vet it with the state before we proceeded too far down that path of planning that, because we obviously don't want to put ourselves in a position of not getting reimbursed for something. But does that help answer your question, Will? It's really just very specific to historic preservation education.
That's perfect. Thanks very much. Are we thinking about that now, or are we coming back with that?
We can come back. We just don't have very much time. It's kind of like, to plan an event, 4 months isn't very much time. And the other thing to consider for you all is, $10,500 isn't that much money, but it is, I guess, in this situation, from a contracting standpoint, what we really would need to do, since we're, have such limited amount of time to implement this funding, is like either split it, and very clearly between two different things, or spend it all in one place, I think, versus trying to do like a handful of different things. We just want to make it simplified, because contracting on our end is pretty tricky, and if we had more time like we did before, then I think it might be easier, but we're kind of constrained by that at this point. And we were supposed to have the money spent by February, by the state to graciously give us an extension, given all we've been navigating.
Does the city manage some electric pole banners? Not electric, you know what I mean? The like SoCon kind of street banners, not crossing the street, but on electric utility. I
think that's a program that is maybe managed by our special events coordinator. Like, I think you have to apply. If we wanted to do something like that, we'd have to apply to ourselves to do it. And I don't know how long, those things take to, sort out, because obviously I'm sure there's a bunch of competing interests for stuff like that. So it's like everything else you do, it's kind of complicated, more than one would think. But do you all still think that the Donovan Ripkema, because that to me is one kind of decent chunk of money that we were looking at, and he was very interested in coming to Asheville. He likes Asheville. We let him know that we could pivot back in the spring with him, and he was, very happy with that offer if we wanted to pivot back to him. But Vice Chair Oliva, go ahead. Sounds like you have a question or comment.
Well, I was just going to ask a little bit more about what Will was thinking with the banners. Was you thinking like that was going to advertise what we were doing, or you were going to point to historic structures with those banners, or?
think those are great. I don't have a plan. I was just wondering. I'm trying to think of something that's going to touch people outside the tribe. And I think the Donovan River Map is perfect. And maybe it's a lighter lift if it's just a venue. But maybe recording what he says, video recording what he says so that it sort of lives in a couple places.
Yeah, I think that when he presented at PNC a few years ago, it was available or still is as Vimeo, I think, if you Google search that. So I imagine he would probably be fine with us recording it. And, you know, the other thing I think that's good about pivoting back to him and like waiting as long as we did is because what we had thought we would really like for him to do is to give a similar presentation to the Preservation North Carolina Conference presentation he gave that really is like kind of gets in there on the intersection of affordable housing and preservation so that that can be shared with, as you said, Will, people beyond our tribe and hopefully kind of help people understand that there's a natural bridge here. And being that it's been so long, I guess, since Helene, I feel like it's maybe feels more normal to pivot to other topics versus just kind of like our recovery specific work.
Yeah, I think that'd be nice to have some specific questions for him that are Buncombe County specific, that he can kind of talk about some case studies that he's already kind of crossed over. But I'm all for the Donovan Ripkema, but I'd like to hear what other people think, or maybe there's other ideas.
I really like the idea of inviting him. Is it possible to have it like a little more open to the public?
Oh yeah.
Like architects and...
Oh yeah, we would try to spread the word. That was kind of partly why we applied for this grant funding in the first place, was because we realized that we do need to reach people outside of our smallish circle. So yeah, that would be the goal certainly. And that was sort of the goal with the Pachecata event too, is because they were willing to engage their audience, but focus their session or whatever event around preservation related topics. And his name is escaping me, but super nice guy, Drew, and I met with him back in the summer, fall sometime. And they had some good ideas about like helping support us. And he did reach back out to us like a month or so ago to ask if we were still interested in partnering with them. So I think those are two still good ways to kind of go with our energy. But again, the Pachecata thing, I think we would want to check in with the SHPO. Of course, when we get our, we have a decent list that we put together back when the last steering committee meeting was. But then also just making sure that doesn't get too hairy from a contracting standpoint. And I think we had, if I recall correctly, had kind of gotten to a place with the Pachecata contact that they were willing to like offer us a flat contract fee for them to facilitate. We would have to do the legwork on getting the presenters, but they would do the legwork in terms of like organizing them and doing the run through, that sort of thing. So, but that still didn't get us to the $10,500.
What kind of investment do you guys have in mind? Would that take up some money to rent the space?
Yes, we could use some money to rent a space. What we were trying to do is to put these two events in the same day. As hard as that would be, but just because what we would like to do is try to engage people to come be there for both things. I think that's what we were talking about before, but that may not, and that would just be one event venue cost. But there's still kind of, we just stopped in the middle of things. So I think we could probably figure out how to spend the money, the rest of the money. But it just might take us a little bit more work, so.
Are we allowed to like partner with other people on the event? If we, like with the Preservation Society or anything, or does it need to be like only city led?
Well, I think it's our money to implement, you know, so and we certainly did try to like, for obviously, I know you guys were on the steering committee, so we did have Preservation Society staff on our steering committee, as well as Oakland County Special Collections and SHPA staff too, to try to help guide us. And we just kind of, like I said, things kind of fell off to, I mean, we certainly want to like have our partners, you know, our preservation partners help us with this, but as far as like, when it comes down to brass tacks, like we have to do the, you know, be the admin basically for this. I don't know if that helps Celesta, but I don't know. I could ask Preservation Society if they have more capacity to work with us on this. I don't know that they do because of their grant program, their newer grant program. I don't know if you guys saw in the press that they got an anonymous donation for, what was it? Well, was it like $150,000? $175,000, something like that. You're muted.
You're muted.
I was just waxing on about that. Yeah, I think it was $125 for 8 businesses, 6 businesses, got $25,000 each.
Yeah, this was
And Biltmore.
Yeah, for Biltmore Village specifically. And that, like, they're not doing their regular grant application cycle this spring, I read, because it sounds like they're super busy. So I can check in with Jesse, the director, and see, like, you know, what do they think in terms of where we are now and what might be practical and useful for engagement opportunities. In a perfect world, it could be more fluid than it really has to be. Like we actually like have to make this super structured, if that makes sense. It can't really be like open-ended, unfortunately.
Is there much? So we just move forward on the Donovan Ripkema in a May date, Preservation Month kind of date?
I think that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. I think that I would like to know how to spell his last name, but besides that, I think that would be good. I feel good about moving forward with him.
Okay. His last name is spelled Rypkema.
Yeah, I never would have gotten that. Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, their consulting firm is Place Economics, if you want to read more about their work. Okay. Well, I feel good about your enthusiasm on that front and direction, and hopefully we can make it timing-wise. We can finally do a Preservation Month event. We've never done one my entire time with the city, so that would be awesome if we could get it to work out that way. Okay, our other topic we need to check in on is the resident-led Montford Design Standard amendments. I wanted to see if you all had any follow-up thoughts since the work session in November, since we haven't had a chance for the executive committee to circle back on that. And so I just wanted to see what your takeaways were, and if you had any kind of new thoughts or newer thoughts on how we want to proceed. We really, like I said at the top, I really am hoping to kind of get this like on a pretty like tightened timeline, and that's partly to do with me. I just really want to like make sure we get this done. I feel like the neighborhood's been super patient with us as we've kind of worked through all this, and we're at a good place to go out and do engagement. But I feel like the topic of fences still feels a little bit unfinished from our work session, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on that and anything else that came up during the work session that you might want to talk about, give feedback on, etc. So, and just a recap, our additions red line was shared with the rest of the commission members, and then we were planning to leave the topic of fencing a little more open-ended as we began our engagement. I have, like, based on the discussion at the work session, I kind of think that maybe we should try to hammer out what we think might make sense from a red line version for fences as well. But my opinion on that is certainly not set in stone. So I look to you guys for some guidance on what your thoughts are. Silence, does that mean everybody's tired of talking about fences? Or just tired in general?
Shannon can go first. She's next to you.
Well, Alex said the meeting is coming up, the Montfort Neighborhood Association meeting, and so, I mean, I'm gonna hopefully make it to that, but I don't know, really what else to say about them. I mean, I know that we talked about using AI to do like drawings and stuff to make them more specific, the guidelines, you know, and hopefully that can work out.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in and help, like with drawing the actual examples of fencing if that feels like what is needed. But I feel like it is more that we don't really, it's not been decided what everyone's feeling for sure on like what we're changing design wise. Maybe that's just me, but
No, I think that makes sense to me, Celesta. It sort of feels like it's a harder topic to get everybody to have consensus on, you know, in terms of the commission members, and maybe that's me just misperceiving things, because I don't really have a clear direction in my own head on that topic, which is I think why we were going to try to leave it somewhat open-ended in terms of our engagement. And so I just want to make sure that you guys feel like that's still where we are, or if you think it's worthwhile spending some time just even having a like red line version light, like what we think might be helpful to refine at least about the set of standards for fences.
I think that would help the community so that they could at least, instead of being so broad, kind of understand where the State Historic Preservation Office and the city, county kind of see from the National Register nomination the emphasis on fences during the period of significance. So I think something, yes, would help. And mostly just correcting some of the contradictions in there where fences aren't encouraged, but you can put a fence. So I don't understand the state language is not encouraged means pretty much no. And but here are the fences to put in your front yard. And but I think the nomination, the National Register nomination spoke so much about the open landscape as being important at the time of the nomination. So I need more professional help from SHPO and staff to kind of direct the path on where they see it falling, because it says both. There's some doublespeak in the standards. Is that right, Alex? Or how does that sound?
No, I think that makes sense. So like, just to, and I'm sure I said this at one point or another, but I did reach out to SHPO staff and they are happy to help kind of give guidance on any proposed amendments we want them to consider. This was totally like an aside conversation, but because the topic of fences has been going on so long, at some point in the past several years, I was having a conversation with one of the SHPO staff members who's our national register person that works in the Western office, Hannah. I bounced the question off of her, like, well, this is the way the National Register nomination is written, that it talks about openness of the landscape being characteristic of Montford. Are we going to shoot ourselves in the foot by carte blanche fences everywhere? And she said in her opinion, yes, that would affect the historic character of the district over time. And so, but I would like to go back to them and get that kind of like formalized feedback in a way so we can also share that with the neighborhood. Because I want them to understand that like your perspective is really has to be focused on preservation of the historic character. Sure, we can all understand that there's practical things to consider, but I think the standards need to be centered around preservation specific, because that's the whole point of the historic district overlay. But I do, like Shannon just was pointing me to the, she has a helpful paper copy of what was being proposed by the residents who initiated these changes. And I think just to turn back to that, their purview was, or perspective was that new fences and walls can be sited anywhere on the property, front, side, or back, in locations that are compatible with the traditional historic relationship of fences and walls to historic properties in the district, and that fences in a front yard shall not be allowed on top of retaining walls and shall be set back a minimum of 2 feet instead of 4. My thought was to try to like see if there was a meeting place we could come to with the neighborhood in terms of if, like, I can think of at least one property in my mind where they literally did not have a backyard to put a fence, a backyard or a side yard. And so maybe we can make a stipulation that if you have room, if you can, accommodate a fence for letting your pets out or whatever in a side or rear yard, then that's, maybe that's where we draw a line and say, in those cases, a fence in a front yard would not be allowed. And make it very site-specific kind of conditions. And then if there are, places where fences are allowed in front yards, and we have very specific designs that are allowed, like we do in the old original guidelines for the district. There were illustrations to Celeste's point that, and there are in the current standards too, there's pictures, like the picture of the post and wire fence, but we could probably make that a little bit more clear or fleshed out. I don't know. That's just an idea that I had that maybe, like obviously for some of the big properties along Cumberland and Montford where fences and front yards have the most impact, I think, most of those parcels are super big, and a lot of those folks can accommodate fencing in a rear yard. I think the other thing we need to do too is check in with our transportation department. One of the things that was communicated to me several years ago related to this topic was the speed limit on Montford Avenue. I think it's 30, and there was some discussion about perhaps it could be lowered to 25 if once the new public safety station was built on Broadway, and obviously that station's been up and running for a while. So maybe that's another thing we could kind of look at to try to, I don't know, quell the safety concerns.
Yeah, they put that down as part of their rationale that it's, the vehicular traffic has increasing desire by residents for safety for children, grandchildren, pets, as well as increased property protection via the ability to have front yard fences. So
it seems like the safety is a neighborhood concern and uh, that keeps coming up. And uh, so I don't know if that is under our purview, um, right, Alex? Life safety kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think we have to be careful with that to some degree because that is more like a practical thing. I'm not,
Hmm.
because our life safety is addressed in federal preservation guidelines or guidance, but it's really related to like building, like accessibility, that sort of thing versus, oh, there's a increased amount of bear traffic, so everybody should have, 10-foot tall metal fences. You know what I mean? It's sort of like there's a little bit of a separation there to me in terms of life safety and just kind of practical. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it seemed like it was kids in the front yard kind of talk, getting out of the yard and that kind of safety. But I see what you're saying. It's kind of vague, more vague and different than accessibility in a structure and stuff like that.
Well, I think site accessibility is important too. Do you know what I mean? Like we were thinking about like handicap ramps and that sort of stuff, but or walkways that have railings, things like that. Versus this to me is a little different. Again, going back to what I was saying, if you can accommodate a fence in your side or rear yard, is that not where you use the fenced-in area? Versus, like I keep thinking about that one property on West Chestnut Street where they fence the entire yard, and I've gotten so many comments about that. Like, well, if that's what's allowed for the standards, and if you guys are supportive of fences everywhere, then that's what that looks like. But I think the other goal would be, really, like at the end of the day, what we need to do is set up the standards so that there is a clear expectation from both the property owner standpoint as well as the commissioners, because I know it's just been a struggle. To your point, Chair Hornaday, like that they're strongly discouraged, but then there are standards for them. So then how do we make those two things either completely divorced of each other or work more harmoniously in some way, which I guess the only solution I can come up with is the one that I'm throwing out there about making a stipulation that if you can accommodate a side or rear fence, then that's maybe a case where a front yard fence shouldn't be allowed. But I'm like
I tend to agree with that, but I think the meeting could be pivotal about seeing how they respond to that idea.
And I think it does need to be very specific of like, if you have the space of like at least a like 10 by 10, I know that's small, I'm just like throwing out things, but like a 10 by 10 backyard that can accommodate the fence, then that counts as having a back fence versus them being like, well, I don't really have a yard, but like we need to put specific, almost like what is counted as like a space that's able to have a fence versus not, because I think that's where they would be like, well, my yard is small compared to this one, so it's almost like what is an actual space that feels
If they have a minimum,
accommodating.
yeah, if they have a minimum of X amount of square footage, then that is enough, because people saying their yard is small, it's all relative.
yeah, that makes sense.
And
Yeah, I think-
I mean, taking away the whole like interpretation per se, like there is still some interpretation, but that's what everyone hates, is the fact that there isn't clearness. And I feel like that would really allow for, that, although that might also hurt people in the long run. Like then then they're like, well, that should have been bigger. I know there's two sides to it.
Well, that's true, but I think being as specific as possible, and I really like Will's suggestions, especially to clear the language, because that sets us up for trouble every time, with people.
And maybe the material of fencing can be specific if the extruded aluminum fences that have become, since the standards were written, those have been introduced, and I don't know if that's in a state, when we say, and just for the people who are watching this later, we keep saying SHPO and that State Historic Preservation Office. Well, when SHPO's sort of opinion and staff's opinion on that fencing, is that appropriate for a historic district when the intention was probably wrought iron? But that's just how I'm reading it. But I'd like to understand more from some preservation professionals.
I think it is important also, Alex, like you said, I don't remember who you said you were talking to about the actual like historic that they were awarded, like making sure that we're keeping the openness. Like I think it's important to get that almost in writing, that maybe we can include somewhere in this, like that's the reason they were awarded this historic like landmarking of this neighborhood is because of the openness landscape and stuff, that this is why the fencing is the way that it is.
Yeah, no, I think that's part of our engagement with the community. Like part of our job is to do a little bit of educating as well, because I think while the group who proposed the amendments, you know, has had probably, I think, most opportunity to hear our initial, you know, our feedback along and along about, you know, the standards have to be grounded in what is the special historic character of the district. That probably is not necessarily the way that everyone thinks that these standards are supposed to be. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of people just hear rules and they hear rules and they don't tie them back to. It was the same. We've had a couple of solar questions come up lately where it's the same thing. It's like, it's, you know, in that case, it's like a little bit of a balance between, you know, usage of newer technologies for, you know, environmentally beneficial things, but then if there were solar panels in every front yard or in the front of every house, that is obviously going down a path that's like antithetical to the whole reason why the district exists in the first place. And so I think it's part of our job in this engagement will be just to, you know, here's what the standards are, here's why they exist and what they're grounded in, so that people can feel like, oh, that makes sense, versus just thinking that you guys are making random rules. You know what I mean? Because I think it could easily feel that way to some people who aren't as familiar with the work of the commission and the role. And just to go back to what Shannon was saying as far as on January 28th, myself and Will and my direct supervisor, and I think Shannon might come too, will be present at the Montford Neighborhood Association meeting. They meet quarterly, and they asked me to come to their meeting this time around. And I'm not going to get in the weeds on the Montford amendments at this point. I'm just going to talk them through the role of the commission, kind of like I did last time I attended one of their regular meetings, and like the process for getting a certificate of appropriateness. And then I'll touch on kind of like what our timeline looks like and next steps for our engagement, which will be, you know, within the next couple of months, doing at least 2 special engagement opportunities for neighborhood folks to come and meet with us to talk to us about, you know, what's on the table, and then we'll also do a survey. And this is all just not quite set in stone, because I need to touch base with our communications staff to make sure we've got our plan kind of put on paper. But that's what in my head what I see, and then the next quarterly MNA meeting, I think is be in April, I believe. So timing wise, I think, you know, I could certainly go back at that point in time and kind of, you know, walk them through, those who wanted to attend, walk them through like what we kind of was being like finalized to present to the commission at that point. Because I think we'll have gotten our engagement, you know, gotten feedback from folks, and I mean maybe we're not. That can be open ended, but our goal is to finalize everything so that we can present to the commission in May, and then have you guys vote in June, because the timeline we're hoping for. It's a little bit ambitious given how slow we normally move, but again, I feel like this has been a conversation that's gone on for so long. I know the neighborhood's ready to get it wrapped up, and we've done a lot of work, and I feel like we've kind of gotten to the point where we're ready to plug in with the community with what we have so far. Does that
I got a
sound-
couple.
Sorry, go ahead, Will.
Go. No, Celeste, go.
If I know that like Commissioner Mays had mentioned, he felt like he had some more comments. Like, is that something that we feel like he could come to like the neighborhood meeting to, speak his word on it, or is that more of a during our meetings, like we need to hear comments from other commissioners about it?
That's a great question. We haven't quite, this is like a new thing for us. We haven't really run into this before. Just to clarify for you, Sue, since you, and you too, Shannon, since you weren't present at the last regular meeting. So Commissioner Mays had reached out to me about the fencing standards in particular, and wanted to give a presentation to you guys about apparently he's done quite a bit of research and has his own red line version. We weren't really prepared to kind of address that at the last meeting, but it came up in other business. And we just were sort of not really sure exactly how to, because our normal MO is that the executive committee, if you read the rules of procedure, you guys have a specific function, which is to do a whole bunch of work on a whole bunch of different topics and then go back to the full commission and kind of share that information, which is what we did at the work session. And I realized that obviously, there's been more time to have new thoughts and do more research, et cetera, on fences. And so I think we're just trying to figure out on our end what the right forum is for that. Is it, to your point, Celeste, because Rob lives in Montford, is that something that comes about in a community meeting where he shares that information then, or is it at one of your regular meetings? Do we need to have another special work session of the commission to kind of workshop what comes out of our engagement? Maybe that's what we need to do in April. We have another work session once we've gotten that information, and that's an opportunity for him to share. We've just never had like an individual commissioner who wasn't on the executive committee just chime in and say, I basically want to participate with the executive committee, but then that's not like really fair to all the other people that are on the executive committee. So we just never run into this. So we're trying to figure out on our end what the best, because we certainly do want to hear his feedback is important. We just are trying to figure out what the right forum is. And you guys obviously have, usually your regular meetings are so long. I think what we would definitely want to do if you all wanted them to like share anybody at the end of an agenda, any commissioner can make comments. I think what we'd want to do is just set like a time limit on it so that it's, because he said his slide presentation is 70 slides long. So.
My
I
gosh.
think I was also wondering if, I don't even know if it's able to happen, like, because I don't know the procedures for this, but like, is it an option that maybe he could, instead of presenting in person, but like, I know you can put voice recordings over your slides, like him, like make the presentation and allow us to just view it on our own time? Or is that not procedurally allowed?
I kind of have a feeling that legal might object to that. Could be totally wrong, but I'll ask them that question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want him to feel like he wasted his time, but I don't know how long a 70 slide PowerPoint's going to take.
I'm curious, like, how much his views represent the community too. I mean, because he wasn't part of this whole thing back in 2024, I don't believe, right?
No.
So it's like, I mean, if he wanted to become a liaison or something with the community, I don't know if that would be an idea, or I don't know if he's
Yeah.
come into the meeting, but wouldn't that be the appropriate thing to encourage him to go that route?
I don't
I
know.
think it's hard because he is part of the neighborhood as well as the commission. It's like a double side.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the reasons why, well, that and just like, it's just like I said, it's just not that we've encountered like, a commissioner just wanting to kind of do their own research and do their own work outside of what the executive committee is doing. So it's sort of just about how we treat everyone fairly. Like so we're still trying to answer that question on our end, I think, and certainly we don't want to like discourage commissioners from sharing their thoughts and research, et cetera, with you guys. We just are trying to figure out what the right forum is. My thought is either it's at an upcoming regular meeting that doesn't have a million things on it. February is jam-packed, so it won't be, probably it won't work for that meeting, but like say, okay, there's 10 minutes in other business for this item if he wants to share with you guys. And then that's an opportunity for, the community to see whatever he's put together, et cetera, and for us to digest it. And for you all to have an opportunity to answer questions as a group. I think that probably makes the most sense, but I haven't had a chance to circle back with legal. We don't have like a defined process for this either, so.
Yeah, it seems like Janice or somebody would need to give us some guidance or try to rein it in or something like that to try to let him know how much time we have and stuff like that.
Alex, just so that people watching know, what do you see public engagement as being? Is that tables in the Montford Center kind of thing, or about each table for one of the 4 items, or I don't know, just so people know what to expect for what is the fence public engagement? And that's pretty much it, or is the whole thing public engagement? All 4 items.
The additions and fences. Remember,
So it's all 4 items.
the executive
No,
committee's
no.
recommendation was not further consideration on the other 2 topics on windows and doors and solar. Unless you
Okay.
guys have changed your minds.
No, but
So
the public
yeah, so
engagement,
we would,
visualize that.
we would work with our communications staff to figure out how we should format it, but like I think the last time we did engagement for amendments, like we gave a presentation on kind of the same thing that we did for the work session, where we kind of gave a summary of the timeline, like a little bit of background, summary of the timeline, what the executive committee's role is and the recommendations that came from you all. And then we would have like, either we would have paper surveys or tablet surveys or whatever ways that folks could weigh in, and we could take feedback from those engagement sessions. So yeah, they would be probably at the Montford Center.
Okay. I think that helps people kind of know what it looks like, where they can have a say, or at least have an understanding that the HRC is protecting the historic district for these XYZ reasons, therefore ABC. That doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me.
Well, that's what I was saying before, that part of the engagement is to educate, and to share on what the goal of the commission and the design standards are, because that's the whole reason for this, It's not just a group of people making up rules for a neighborhood.
Keep things in perspective, yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to jump off soon, if not to rush anything.
No, it's fine. It's 10:28, so I think unless anybody has any additional comments, my last thing in closing on my end is just to be thinking about the other topics we need to talk about in February. Because obviously we have to focus on these 2 buckets of things today, but next month when we convene, it will be virtual again, but we can talk about miscellaneous things since we've gotten our virtual meetings going forward, so.
One question, is the Montford National Register nomination in the drive folders for us to review?
It is not, but I can add that for you guys.
That'd be great.
I think it's in probably where the stuff lives for the proposed amendments, but I'll share that back out with everybody so you guys have it.
Great. Thanks, Alex.
Of course. Well, it's good to see all of you, and I hope you have you're having warmer weather in California too, although you look bundled up.
Yeah, it's 39. I mean, Paso Robles has a 40-degree temperature difference every day. So whatever it is in the morning, it's 40 degrees warmer in the afternoon. So that's why the grapes are so happy here.
Yeah, we'll have a delicious glass of wine for me. Love
I will do
Paso
that.
Robles.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Good luck through the
Bye.
snowstorm.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.